Start small instead of trying to do the whole thing. Focus on what problems you're trying to solve. Partner with the right technologies and either do a pilot or proof of concept. Succeed or fail fast. That needs to happen, regardless. Scale, learn from that failure.
Welcome to the Agile Digital Transformation Podcast, where we explore different aspects of digital transformation and digital experience with your host, Tim Butera, Content and Community Manager at AgileDrop.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Our guest today is Alma Kondili, innovative digital leader with over 15 years of experience in driving change within the financial services and startup sectors. Today, we'll be discussing how doing digital transformation right is a prerequisite for seeing success with AI initiatives and AI transformation. Alma, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Anything to add here?
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be part of your podcast. I've listened to some and they are really great guests. So thank you for allowing me to join this wonderful platform. I started my journey in technology, and then along the way, I became very passionate about strategy. And then I moved into operation excellence. I learned very early on the value of organizational change. And then at some point in my career, I read a book that was very influential, The Third Wave by Steve Casey, who is the former founder of AOL. And he put it into perspective what digital transformation was going to be and how it was going to transform the economy and our lives. And that happened sometimes in 2016. I went back to training, which has been a path of my life in design thinking. And I had a front row seat to drive digital transformation as I joined DocuSign. So it's been quite a journey, and I would love to share, some of the things that I learned, what I am observing right now in this, I called it gold rush into the AI, and, looking forward to a great conversation.
Awesome. Same here. And yeah, let's get right into it. And to start off, to set the stage, I'm wondering what kind of connection there is actually between digital transformation and AI initiatives.
Yeah, that's a great question because I think there are a lot of similarities and dependencies between the two. For example, a company that had succeeded in digital transformation have created an end-to-end business architecture, have embraced platform thinking, have applied data strategy, have achieved a high level of adoption by its employees and customers, and ultimately have seen high ROI in its investment of digital transformation. And this company is in a much better place to first and foremost identify the AI initiatives to further, pretty much extend and gain much more ROI in the process because there is this foundation in place. The opposite, is when companies have failed miserably to do this in the right way, have done this, what I call it in a silo mode, have picked and choose easy things to do without ever addressing an end-to-end transformation and without ever building platforms to create either digital products or digital services. And even more, never, approached a data strategy in the right way. So they still, lacking the foundation for driving AI. So I think these are the two extremes. Anything in between, probably it allows companies to play a little bit with AI. But I think the ones that going to be, the leaders are the ones that have done digital transformation in a really successful way.
But we know that that's quite a minority, right? I mean, only about like we've all heard probably most of the people listening to this right now will have heard the figure of 70% of DT initiatives actually not succeeding. So why is that relevant for our discussion? Why do you think that this failure rate is so high, and what does this mean for AI initiatives apart from what we've already discussed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Personally, what I have observed, and I think the rate is high, especially among large corporations and enterprises. And a classic example is General Electric. Its failure of digital transformation literally brought down the whole company and now has been chopped to pieces and sold. So some things we learned in this particular case is that, and that applies to all other companies, is first and foremost, start small instead of trying to do the whole thing. Focus on what problems you're trying to solve, partner with the right technologies, and either do a pilot or proof of concept. Succeed or fail fast, that needs to happen, regardless. Scale, learn from that failure, or as you succeed, scale as fast as you can. And then engage both employees throughout, change management strategies, but also the clients, and also share a percentage of the profits with clients to gain that trust and adoption on digital products and services. So, and then continue this cycle and break the silos and build platforms and leverage SaaS and define a cloud strategy. But what we saw, is that the opposite of all this happened. GE tried to do everything, tried to become and build everything in house and failed miserably. So I think why not learn from the failures and try not to imitate them? So with AI, it seems to be a lot of activities all over the place without much orchestration, without much governance. There is no what I consider a center of excellence built in some large companies to share best practices or learn and average solutions across. For example, if you have an LLM and you are successful on applying that LLM, why not leverage it across, other businesses? So the role of a COE, for example, in this case, will help to identify who owns the AI. I mean, I heard different names, but I've seen more and more, companies having a chief AI officer, and that's a great starting point because without proper leadership and ownership, it's very difficult to drive something that important for a company. Some are calling it an AI SAR. Regardless of the name, it needs to be defined who owns AI. And then that person needs to bring together both business and IT into the conversation and leverage past automation, address the data, bring risk and compliance very early on, engaged on those conversations as well. So again, there is a roadmap how to do it right, but also how to avoid, all the things that we learned from digital transformation. So it's kind of, you need almost, a centralized way to at least start and have a centralized way to understand what's happening and where the investments are going and what are the outcomes as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, experience with digital transformation will basically translate into more experience in a similar vein with AI, and
Absolutely.
will help more responsible and more successful implementations of these new technologies.
That is a great summary. Absolutely. I
Mhm.
could not agree more. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the reasons for the massive failure rate of DT initiatives. Would you say that one of these reasons is also a misunderstanding or not understanding the full scope
Mm.
of digital transformation?
Yeah, I think I would start with the strategy. And this is probably where a lot of companies, have really kind of failed since from the beginning. First and foremost, again, who needs to articulate that strategy? And probably I will get that there a little bit more of. of, what are some of the key components of the digital transformation leaders. But as we started with the strategy, what we need to define: what is the North Star? Why is this important to the company? And this is all part of defining that scope. What are we trying to address? What are we trying to fix? If this is like a burning platform, for example, how are we going to transform the business? And what is the risk if we don't do anything? It's also, all of this needs to be really validated and kind of articulated. And what kind of disruptions are happening in our sectors? I mean, we really need to put this into the context, because not one company acts alone. Is part of, it's acts into a sector. Let's say financial services, for example, or retail, or you name it. I mean, pharma. You are in that sector. There are disruptions happening there, for example. So you have to be constantly seeing what others are doing, and how are they being transformed, and also look internally and see, can you become a disruptor, and how can you become a disruptor, leveraging either digital transformation or enabling, and if you have done that successfully, enabling now the AI. So all of this needs to be in the context of business and business outcomes. Unless that is the North Star, shooting in the dark is it's gonna fail miserably, and you're gonna see a lot of investment being wasted in that process as well. My view of digital transformation is almost like a symphony. There
Mm.
is a lot of orchestration that needs to happen, but you really need to have a great conductor, and that conductor really need to know, what the symphony is from the beginning to end. And there is a lot of agility, and there is a lot of things that, it will be discovered, and probably in the process of doing this right, more disruptions or more, great initiatives will come across. But we have to start with something that is meaningful to our business.
Mhm. So who should be the conductors in order for maximum possible success?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had the pleasure, to be involved with Isaac Sakolik. He's the author of Digital Trailblazer, and he has an amazing follow up. He does every Friday, stand up, and I'm lucky to be invited in that stand up. But collectively, there was probably 10 of us that were invited by him to provide, a variety of skill set that we feel as digital trailblazers are important. And we came up, with an extensive 50, but I will focus on five that are really, core competencies, I believe.
Mhm.
It starts with leadership, and this is, it should pretty much answer the question of leadership style, qualities, or practices. Personal competencies. I mean, you need to be competent to do this. So identifying what should be the personality skills, the knowledge, the behaviors that are common of digital trailblazers. The people skills. I mean, at the end of the day, again, if you're going to be a leader, you need to have the people to follow you, but also you have to engage, to have a certain style to engage. So how a digital trailblazer approaching those practices when collaborating with teams, partnering with other leaders, or supporting individuals is super important. It's always the part of being digital fluent, so to speak, recognizing the types of skill digital trailblazers rely on to translate opportunities into solutions and deliver business outcomes. And then from a transformation, it's specifying the types of practices a digital trailblazer will likely apply to challenge the status quo, grow supporters, handle detractors, and lead change management practices.
Mhm. And we know that one very important part in both the digital transformation and AI initiatives is data, right? So can we talk a little bit more about this role of data and what the key considerations and challenges with data are that are relevant here the most?
Yeah, I think, and I tried to touch a little bit prior to, one of the core dependencies on a successful digital transformation is the designing of a data strategy and the implementation of a data strategy. What does that mean? Because it sounds like a great thing to have. That means is that pretty much there is a strategy in place that all the systems slash platforms somewhere somehow are interconnected and there is a data flow, but
Mhm.
also there is a consistent way of capturing and controlling that data across the platforms, and those controls and based on risk and compliance are in place. So and that also enforces data quality, but also there is this interconnectivity of data in place that enables to have real-time reporting and look at trends and make decision based on the data. But unless we design the entry point of the data and how the data flows and all of that, it's very difficult to end up with great reporting, because there is this classic thing, garbage in, garbage out. Unless we have this really rigorous controls in place, and the best way to design that is by designing this end-to-end business architecture, so to speak, then it becomes so much easier, to have this data. So now what we're seeing, for example, I'll focus in financial services because that's where I'm a little bit more comfortable and I have a little bit more visibility. But in financial services, for example, the PII, which is personal data, it needs to be completely scrapped out. And that leaves you with synthetic data. And that is, again, you have to have all the data, captured in such a way, and that in order to have a way to extract and kind of or mask out all the PII data to become synthetic data. That's what you need to have in place in order to even start thinking about AI and running LLMs against the data. Because the moment you touch PII, your firm is done, your brand is done. You
Mhm.
can't ever, cross that line. And when we talk about the guardrails, those are some of the guardrails that need to be in place when it comes to data privacy. And now, for example, there is, in Europe, there is a great deal of work that's been done to come up with legislation against, to pretty much govern AI. The same has not happened yet in the US. So in the space of AI, we kind of, almost acting based on everything that we know, at least, the fundamentals that at least we know we never should touch. Probably even more guardrails or even more compliance will come and will need to be applied. But at least for now, we just have to go with the things that we know. And that's why, again, the data is what I call the golden source. Unless the data is clean and there is the right data in place and it's captured in a way that you can extract it, it's the only way that's going to make successful AI. So that's a core dependency between a digital transformation done right and the AI implementation right there.
Yeah, I think that that's a great example of the interconnectedness between the two. Because even before AI, there was a lot of talk about data, the importance of doing data right. A lot of talk about this discrepancy between personalization and privacy on kind of different ends of the spectrum, and it's even more pronounced now with AI, right? As you pointed out. So definitely important point of discussion here. But now I want to focus on something that's basically on the other end of the spectrum, but I think that it's also very important, and that's company culture. How
Hmm.
important would you say that that's during any kind of transformation? So either digital or an AI transformation.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've become more and more passionate because I have seen what the culture does. And Draper, years ago said that culture is strategy for breakfast.
Mhm.
And it's surprising, a very strong statement, but also very true, rings true at any given time. What we know is that the only constant in the business right now is change.
Mhm.
And what we have experienced in the last 20 something years is that that speed of change has accelerated. And I have observed two types of companies: the ones that are rigid, structured, layered with management, and by design, they are stagnant. They are encouraging siloed thinking. And then you had a flat organization, which is so much more agile. It's built on cross-functional and very collaborative, but it's by design. So these two structures these are the models that we have right now. The first is resistant to change and is designed to resist any change, to
Mhm.
preserve the legacy. And the second, it embraces change. It's fluid, it's kind of it's built to experiment. It's built to experiment and fail fast, or succeed and succeed fast. So the companies that will survive in the future will need by design to become flat. So they are by design resilient to change.
Mhm.
But what is even more important is that we need to start building this continuous learning culture, because what we've seen, for example, during the digital transformation, there was a lot of upskilling that needed to happen. So for people to be able to run a digital transformation successfully or adopt successfully. So the same goes for AI. So when people say, "Oh, AI is taking away jobs," and there is some truth to that. Oh, AI is taking away jobs of the people that are not even learning AI. So and the ones that are learning AI probably will prosper in the next, years to come. So it's all about approaching this right, and designing, the structures companies that are almost like living organisms to become, again, resilient to change, but also embracing continuous learning culture. So how do we get there? That's the other. So, first and foremost, you need the sponsorship and the leadership. But there is, a proven, method, and change management seems to be one of them. So I can focus a little bit more some of the things that I've seen to work really well, in the AI and in the past year. So identifying, for example, role models, designating, as I said before, someone that owns AI or is the champion of AI in the company. Ensure that the people that are involved can dedicate, a portion of their time to the AI initiatives. What happens sometimes that I've observed is the people do their daily job in addition, to be given initiatives. And it's impossible to do, very well and successfully what you are hired to do, and then engage fully to run another initiative. So you either, kind of be reduce their responsibilities in order to focus and focus successfully on these initiatives, or completely move into these initiatives. I mean, that conversation, and again, is thinking about the resources in a very, agile way, but also making that investment. Map relevant resources, identify those resources, current tools, align incentives. Sometimes you're going to change the incentives, if people are going to take more, or they're going to completely switch and do something else that needs to be recognized. What we fail to do, and I've seen this in digital transformation, and it's again in AI, we need to set measures of success. What does it mean to have a successful AI initiatives? How are we going to measure on a weekly basis, for example, because things move fast, that we either succeeding or we're failing. So we really need to have a clear definition there. Set some KPIs, like what the cost, the speed, the resources, the work efficiency, how many people are using it, for example, and consider the deployment strategy. What how many users in each stage, who will benefit the most, what are the likely obstacles, identify skills and knowledge gaps in the organization. We need to have, and it's part of a well-run change management. what is the readiness of the company? And we did the same, for example, when a company started digital transformation, a digital transformation readiness was run to measure where the company stood, what the culture, what was the existing, sentiment and behaviors. The same need to happen for AI. Unless we know where we stand, you can't start to move or coach or communicate and try to change behaviors because you don't have a baseline, literally. I think these are some of the things that I have observed, and they are pretty much similar to the digital transformation and to the AI. But I think, and more, I'm hearing change management becoming a central focus point because we're finally realizing that in order to be successful and in order to implement correctly, but also adopt correctly the AI initiatives, we're going to need change management applied across the company.
Was a great point right there at the end. And so, Alma, taking everything into account based on everything that we discussed today, and to kind of summarize our discussion, what would be your top tips or your top words of advice to business leaders that are maybe struggling with their digital transformation and their AI programs?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm happy, and I hope this is first and foremost, people find some value in what I shared. But I think I would focus in some key areas. Enable platform thinking because
Mhm.
that is key to productivity at scale, to the collaboration and deployment. Think end to end because that brings balance alignment. Incorporate design thinking, into that end to end. Again, try to create disruptive innovation as you get engaged. Communication or as part of the organizational change, engagement, training, adoption, build and sustain momentum, consistent quantitative and qualitative, measurements, and a talent strategy, I think it should be central. And that applies both to internal and external, meaning internally, build and retain top teams, have the incentive alignment, upskill across, different lines of business, and capture what is considered to be the tacit knowledge. There are people that have been probably working on a company for years and years. Sit with them and get that information, record it through video, leverage AI to capture. But we need that, that knowledge in order to transform our business. But also from an external perspective, develop a talent pipeline. I mean, the war on talent, it's only going to get pretty much worse. So partner with universities, data hackathons, AI hackathons. Try to be plugged in and think on the long term, not just immediately, and so that's why I call this talent pipeline. But there is also a governance. Think about the ethical and the safe AI, the data quality and the privacy, the access, the model explainability, interpretability, the monitoring, integration to technology, software, and pretty much those are my key components.
Those are definitely some great tips and tricks to finish the episode on, Alma. Thank you so much for a great discussion. Just before we wrap up the call, if anybody listening right now would like to connect with you or learn more insights from you, where would you point them to?
I am in LinkedIn, so reach out and I am very happy to connect and jump on a call and, always open to new connectivity, so to speak. Thank you
Right.
so much, team. This has been a great conversation and look forward to hear from you all.
Likewise, Alma, I really enjoyed speaking with you today. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, that's all for this episode. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to check out our other episodes, you can find all of them at agiledrop.com/podcast, as well as on all the most popular podcasting platforms. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes, and don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and colleagues.